Good morning. How's everybody this morning?
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Fantastic. Looks like everybody is here this morning, or most of us, anyhow. Let's just grab that attendance. Fantastic. So the good news is we're getting really close to Friday, and we have very little that we want to cover at this point, except for one thing. I want to make sure that you are working on your project and try to finish it off. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes as well. So let's take a look at the next thing we want to explore. I'm just going to pull this out of the way. Fantastic. There we go. And somebody's coming in the other way. Fantastic. So, so far we've explored a lot of different areas within PowerPoint. How we can actually, excuse me, how we can manipulate it, how we can actually create these presentations. And as I've mentioned before, the whole idea is to give your audience, whoever is looking at your PowerPoint, just enough information that you can fill in the blanks. So sometimes it's nice to create something that is interesting, but we don't want to get too carried away by putting too many things onto a slide. We want to keep it kind of simple. So just as a quick reminder, I've kind of created this slide here, which is more of an introduction. Hopefully you can all see my screen, correct? Everyone can see the screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic. So,
Yes.
so you can actually see it's very simple. There isn't a lot there. And yet I recreated it by creating this particular scenario. But again, I kept it kind of simple. I didn't want to put too many things into it. I want to keep it kind of open looking. This would allow me.
Michael,
Yeah.
sorry, I cannot see your screen.
Try to refresh your browser.
Okay.
Can you see it now? Okay. So I've tried to keep it really simple. It's not too cluttered. And even though with this little cloud I put down here, that kind of clutters it a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of that. I really didn't need it. I could use other things entirely to move around. And the other one was when I actually created some simple slides, I tried to keep them kind of simplistic. I didn't want to put too much in, and I wanted to keep them very easy to look at. You know, sometimes when you look at a book or you look at a page and it's got too much information in it, it kind of turns you off and you don't really want to get too close to it because there's just too much of it. And when I actually look at this one here, which has a little bit of design in it, it's still kind of simple. There's a lot of there. I probably would have taken the buttons per se and moved them out of the way. But just for the design element, I left it the way it was. But again, there isn't a lot here. Now, normally within a slide, unless this was a kiosk, which simply means that it would be up to the person viewing it to actually read the content. In most cases, when it happens to be slides that we are creating that we intend to talk about, then we don't really want to put a lot of detail in. We want to keep it very simple. So we would simply put in bullet points. And just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, let me just switch over to this one here. Here I have a lot of content, but I don't want all that content if I intend to talk about it. So what I would end up doing here is I would make it very simple. Let's just change this a little bit. Just going to zoom it up a bit. There we go. So I would change this because this is not something I want them to learn all about the cupcakes. What I want them to do is to follow instructions. And I'm simply going to put in here step number 1. Okay, and then after that, I'll put in step number 2. And I'll just proceed a little bit here, and I'll go up to 5. Now, some of you have noticed that there is a rule, which is called the 6 by 6 rule, or rule of 6. It's called many different things, sometimes the rule of 3, but in this case, it's the rule of 6. All it really means is 6 words per bullet point, maximum, and 6 lines, in other words, 6 bullet points, is basically all you should have in a slide. I'm going to say that's not a very smart rule because it's not the way the brain functions. It's somebody's idea that this is the way it should be so it doesn't become too cluttered. However, there is a better approach to this, and that is an odd number. It should always be an odd number. And the reason for the odd number is because it's the way your brain reacts to things. It likes to have odd numbers rather than even numbers. So now I'm just going to highlight these a little bit. Now I could give it a little bit more information here. Just going to make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And I would probably put beside it where to start. And then, of course, for the second one, I could say start mixing. And for the next one, I could say time. And then we could say roasting time. And then maybe the last thing is the eat-in time. Fantastic. And that would be enough. You don't really need to have massive quantities of information because here's the caveat. What we're really trying to do here is provide the person who is actually listening to the presentation some semblance of knowing where we intend to go with this slide. So step number 1, it just simply says where to start. So that's when you would start explaining what where to start means. And you would go into a little bit of detail about it, but you wouldn't put it on the slide. You would talk about it. Remember, these are kind of like guideposts. It's just telling the audience where you intend to be going with your presentation. And then, of course, step number 2, once I finish with where to start, I can start talking about mixing the ingredients and which one comes first, which one comes second, and then start to explore how we put them all together eventually. And then oven time, setting up the oven, the temperature, etc., the timing, etc. This is where I would actually start to embellish it verbally. So the slide really is nothing more than a guidepost. It is, let's say, a map. I intend to go in this particular direction and talk about this subject. And usually within a slide, it's the same subject. So in this case here, I'd be talking about cupcakes. In the next one, I'd be talking about cooking your dog. Please don't do that, by the way. There was a woman in the United States, didn't quite understand the philosophy of a microwave and put her little dog into the microwave after washing it and to kind of dry it off. Unfortunately, the dog exploded. So you don't want
Oh my God, that's horrible.
So this is cooked puppy dog. Fantastic. So you want to make sure you're not doing stupid things like that. So again, when we're actually putting a slide together, it's really one subject per slide. If, for instance, I was talking about, let's say the Taj Mahal, okay, and I had a whole bunch of slides about the Taj Mahal, and I wanted to talk about, let's say, its appearance, so I'd put a little picture in there, and then on the side of it, I would put the tier, and I would put the path, and also the crypt and things like that. But these could all be separate. And for the tier, I could simply say that in the mornings, every morning, one drop actually falls from the ceiling. There is a crevice at the ceiling, which accumulates at least one drop of dew every morning, which falls directly onto the crypt and onto the body, so to speak. So these are little things that you could actually show an image and then maybe one or two bullet points to kind of give you something that you can talk about. Some of you probably realize that when a presentation takes place, you may actually find yourself a little tongue-tied, not really knowing what to say, where to start. Well, this is where you can use a couple of bullet points and they kind of help you talk. It's just like talking to your friends on the phone. So when I have something that says like here, frosting time, I can actually start off by saying, you know, the one thing you want to be very careful of is not to put your finger into it and start eating it before you apply it to your cupcake. And therefore, you want to put it on before it starts to harden. Of course, we can play around a little bit with that, but at least it gives me something I can talk about. If your friend on the phone says something, then of course you start to rationalize because now you have a subject. And those bullet points are your subjects that you're talking about. So sometimes breaking it down and just thinking, what would I like to talk about? What comes first? What comes second? And look at it that particular way. If you were talking about a child, you could actually say, you know, it's always a pleasure when I actually measure to see how high they've grown. My mother used to do this when she used to put a yardstick up on the side of the wall, and then I'd stand against it and she would measure to see how high I was that particular week. She wanted to know what was happening to all the food I was consuming. Was it helping or not? So again, keep it simple. Don't try to just pack it solid. Now with animations, of course, we just talked about animations yesterday. Let's just take this slide, for instance. What if I take step number 1 and I decide to apply an animation to it? So I'm just going to highlight it, and then I'm going to go to animation, and I will apply, well, let's see, up here. We'll try up here. Okay, and that was a little on the quick side, so I'm going to kind of slow that down a little bit because that was just a bit too fast. And let's just make it about 3. Let's try that and see what happens. Well, that definitely was a little slow. So let's try flying instead. There you go. And then, of course, I can come in here and I can do number 2, step number 2, so that it kind of flies in as well. Okay, and it came in by itself. Of course, we would have to experiment a little bit and try to figure out how we intend to put all of these different elements together. So once again, number 1 I set up, which was fly in, and then I'm going to set up number 2, remember, addition. And we'll do a fly in as well. Okay, I have to reorganize this. It's taken the box. But we could set up each one of these so that they all came in at different intervals. And here's the other thing I wanted to talk about was the timing and the delays. So if I wanted something to happen later, afterwards, and to do that, I'm simply going to remove these 2 very quickly. And I'm going to decide I would like to have my picture come in first. So I'm going to say I want it to fly in. There you go. And then I want to have, let's say, the title come in. So the title is going to be the next one. Add that one. And I'm going to have that one fly in as well. Now, we talked yesterday about direction as well. And you do have the ability to modify what direction those particular animations are coming from. So maybe this time I wanted it to come from the top, where the picture I wanted to come from the bottom, or even from the side. So let's do the side. I'll click on here and we'll take it from the left. Fantastic. So when I actually play these things, they come in one after the other. So the question now becomes, should this happen immediately? Should it come in, let's say, with the previous one, but I'd like it to happen 2 seconds afterwards. So I'll make this 2 instead. So number 1 here is going to happen. This title is going to come in 2 seconds after the picture comes in. And then, of course, this section, we'll make it a whole section. And I'll add that this also comes in. And we'll say it flies in as well. Comes from the, let's say, from the right-hand side. So we'll just take it and we'll put it from the right-hand side. And we'll say that the delay here is a little bit higher. So we'll take this up because I don't want it to happen right away. Well, let's take 2.5. So now let's play all 3 of them. So this way we can actually bring in different elements at different times. And of course we could do the buttons as well so that they pop in on their own as well. So let's take a look. A delay, another delay. And then we have this part. And you can actually, by practicing your presentation, determine when they should come in. Or you can use the mouse. In other words, click on them to get them to do what you want them to do. Again, it's a question of playing a little bit. Now, I use the horse, and we use the horses to come in, and they were part of the animation. I used to actually create a little sailboat and have the sailboat come across. And as it was coming across, the sun would go down. And then the background I would have as a dark thing with lots of stars in it. And it would pop up against the blue sky and I eventually remove the blue sky. And this was an introduction. And you can have so many different things. Maybe I could have mountains in the background that are moving across. So why don't we do that just for kicks? Let's just put something in like that. I'll put a brand new slide in. We're just exploring a little bit this morning. So here's my title slide, my new one. And how am I going to fit it out? Well, let's put a picture in the background. So I'm going to start off with a picture. Eventually. Fantastic, and I'll type in, oops, there we go. So we have some, that looks nice, excuse me. I think I'll use this one here because I have an idea of something else I want to do. So here's this beautiful little picture, but you know something? I really don't want it to look quite like this, so I'm going to make it smaller. Remember I said before, anything that is on the slide will be visible. Anything that is not on the slide will not. So I can play a little bit here. I just want to make sure it's going to be on the very edges of the slide. In actual fact, when you click on it, you can actually see the slide in the background. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of position a little bit. Now I'm going to play. I'm going to drag it out. Whoa, way off the screen there. Now my slide is in here. So if I click on it, I can see where my slide is. There's my slide. So I'm now going to go in the opposite direction. I just want to have lots and lots of space here. Fantastic. So there's my mountain. And I'm just going to position it, there we go, at the beginning of that slide so that it covers the slide here. And I just want to test this idea. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to make it move across the screen. So once again, animation. And for my animation, I'll click on the picture. There we go. And I'm going to use the custom, which is the line. There's my line. Now it is the wrong direction, so I want to spin that around a little bit. And I want to add it all the way across here. Good show. And let's test it and see what happens. So I'm going to press F5. Whoops. My apologies. Should have been Shift F5. There it is. So now I didn't set it up to do anything special, so I'm going to click on it. And that's a little bit too fast. So escape. And I notice there's still more of the mountain over here. So I can actually just take this a step further still. I'll just click on that little red button, hold down the Shift key, drag it across even further. Okay, and I'm going to slow it down. So we're going to change this to 10. Fantastic. And we'll test the speed just to see how fast it is. Oh, that's still kind of fast. You're going to freeze to death on that mountain. Okay, it's a little too far too. So we're going to bring it in slightly. I'll bring it down a little bit so I can see it. And I'll hold the Shift key. Bring it back to about there. That might be too far. So let's take it back here again, ever so slightly. To about there. Okay, so this time, yes, the speed, I think I'll make it even slower still. We'll take it up to 13. So 13 seconds to go across the screen. Let's see how it works. That kind of looks a little bit better. Now, you got to keep in mind, you could spend the whole day playing with this thing, and that's not necessarily what I want to do. So now I want to take this little area, and just to help me figure out where I am, I'm going to put a little, let's put a little square here so I have an idea of where that slide is. So I'm just going to pick my picture up for a second. And I'm going to put a box around it so that I have an idea of where that slide is. So I guess it would have helped if I moved the picture again. There we go. So now I have an idea of where it is. Let's just put a box around it. Now I'm only doing this box so that I can see where the slide is. And then I'm going to remove the box afterwards. So I'm just going to remove the interior of it. Here it's gone. And now I know fundamentally where that slide is. So let's get rid of that image. Okay, so now I just have the outline and I can see where that slide is. So I'll bring my picture back down to where it was. Fantastic. And now inside of this border, I can put in other things and then animate them. So I'm going to put in, let's say, a title. And let's use word art. Word out, or change the color of it as well. Let's just zoom way up. That's better. Okay, so let's change the name of this to mountains. No, I don't think we'll do that. We'll say mountain. So I'll actually call it Mountain Vista. And let's just make it a little bit wider so that I have enough space for both words. There you go. And I'm going to put this, since I know where the slide is. Okay, remember that little box I put around it so that I knew where it was going to be. I'm going to take this mountain vista. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Again, this is a question of play and see what you can do with what you have. So I'm going to make it a little bit larger, maybe 66. There you go. And we'll change the color so that the color actually accentuates the background. So once again, I'll highlight it. And let's see, color font. What are we going to use? Dark blue, maybe? Yeah, dark blue is kind of nice. So we'll use the dark blue. And we'll position it right there. Fantastic. So that's kind of in the middle of the slide. Oops. My mistake. There we go. Okay, we're back. So let's just now take this and let's animate this one. So I'm going to come in here. And since the other one is animated, I'm going to say addition. And this time I want to have something that makes it interesting. So we'll say I wanted to introduce it to grow. So we'll grow it. There you go. And I'd like this to happen with the previous. Okay, so it switches it back to 1. But now I'm going to delay it because I don't want it to appear right away. So I'm going to say about 2. And I'm going to increase the span of time that it appears. So now that's going to be 2 as well. And let's see, effect. Well, let's leave it the way it is for the moment. And let's see what it looks like. So press F5 so we can see it. Oops. Of course, Shift F5 would have been a little bit better. There it is. Now all I have to do is click. Now I could have set it up so that it automatically started when the slide came into view. That's kind of nice. However, it's not enough. So let's try again. So right now it comes into the picture, but I'd also like it to do some other things too. So I'm just going to click on that little rectangle around the vista. And I'm going to add one more. This time I'm going to go to emphasize, and I'd like it to actually grow and then shrink again. So I want it to actually expand. There you go. That's even better still. And then after it's done that, and I don't want it to be with click, I want it to be after it actually arrives. So I'm going to say with previous. And I'm going to say I want this delay to be at least, let's take it up to about 3, well, let's say 3.5. That'll give us enough time. And then we're going to do one more thing. I'm going to put some more text in here. So I'm going to insert, I'm going to put a text box in. I'm going to draw that below. There's my text box. And I'm going to use kind of a gray rather than a white. White has a tendency of overpowering. So I'm simply going to put in here, create it. And I'll put a colon, and then I'll put my name, Michael. Fantastic. And Trios College. Fantastic. Well, that doesn't look all that great. Let's zoom it up a little bit. No, doesn't look that great. So let's highlight it. And let's change the color of the font. So I'll come up here. And I'm going to use a gray color rather than a white. Again, it kind of looks better when it is that kind of a grayish color, especially for a subtitle. And I want it to be bigger. So I'm going to bring it up to about, right about there. And I'm just going to tone that down a little bit. That's a little bit better. And I'll put it in the middle. So we'll just position it. And now I'm going to animate this. So I'll click on the line around it. There we go. And since it seems to be semi-positioned, well, it's close. Is that great? There we go. And I'll put it just a little bit lower. Fantastic. And now I'm going to animate this. Okay, and this is going to come in after. Now we're going to do a little bit different this time. So I'm going to have it actually float in. Wait a minute now, what else have we got here anyhow? We have wipe, wheel, shape, swivel, grow and turn. No, I think I'll stick with my float in. Take the float in, that's got it. That's a little bit better. And we'll leave that, but we're going to change this slightly. This time, I'm going to choose after previous. So it's going to do the mountain view, and then this is going to come in. Okay, once the mountain, well, actually the mountain view is going to disappear too, isn't it? So we'll just save that, and we'll say the duration, well, let's take it up just a notch. Fantastic. So let's animate that and see what happens. F5. I keep forgetting. Shift F5 is what I want. Okay, so let's click. Now, one other thing you could do here is when you're switching from one slide to the other, you could start off with it being dark and then slowly building up a little bit of light. I just want those mountains to keep moving across. So I'm going to make another adjustment here because the name won't come in until the whole animation stops. So instead of having this separate, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it with previous, and I'm just going to increase the timing just ever so slightly. We'll say 4, and that'll bring it in. Now, the other thing I wanted to do as well, in this situation here, we're just going to change this slightly. I'm going to put a transition in so that I can show you what I meant by I want it to be dark and then come into it. So we have several possibilities here. We can fade, okay, from one to the other, and I'm going to choose this one. Okay, but that was a little fast, so we're going to slow it down a little bit. Just increasing it to about 2. Let's see what that looks like. That's a little bit better. And instead of having this first animation start up by, let's say, I'm just clicking on it right now, and I'm going to go back to animations. So now that I have this picture, I want this picture to start with the previous. So as soon as it opens up, I want it to start. So let's start off by starting with this particular slide. So this is Shift F5. There it is. And now I'm going to move to the next slide. So I'll click. The animation automatically starts up. And it lasts just a little bit longer. And in fact, I would probably want the animations to last just a little bit longer, especially the mountain moving across. And then I'd like it to fade away. So, and I could do that by simply fading it down to black and then go to the next slide. I'm just trying to give you some ideas as to things that you could experiment. You could try, you could find out what happens when I do something, and can you actually play a little bit with it? And of course you can. It's just a question of experiment, see what happens when you do something. I'm just changing this to 14 seconds. And I've set it up the way I'd like it to be set up so that everything happens in its own way. Now, we also have Animation Painter. You could add animations that are similar to another item in this, or I could open up that animation pane and take a look at the timing. So if you're having difficulty with something, you know, opening up a little late or not on time, okay, so I can just simply drag that over a little bit so it starts a little bit later. And we can play a little bit with that. So with these animations, it really can become a lot of fun where you're really exploring. So let's put a transition on the next one that will take that mountain sky and bring it into our cooking. So I'm going to go back to transition, and I'm going to look for dissolve. So I want it to dissolve away. No, I don't. I don't want it to dissolve away. What else do we have here? Cover, uncover, checkerboard, fall over. Fall over is good. Crush, no. Unless you want to crush the mountain. Fly through orbit. They've taken one away from me. It's not here anymore. So we'll take our, well, let's take our glitter. Fantastic. And we'll change the direction of the glitter. Let's have it come from the top. Yeah, that's kind of nice. So let's try it and see what happens here. So just go back to this one, Shift F5. And then I'll press the space bar to go to the next slide. It should automatically start. There she goes. Fantastic. So one of the other things we could have done here was with that mountain vista, we could have actually had it disappear as well near the end. So let's do that very quickly, and then we're going to do something else. So let's just click here, and I'm going to exit. So I'm going to go animation. I'm going to go to addition, and I'm going to go down to exit. And I would like it to fade away. That's nice, but that's too quick. So let's make it slowly fade away. Now we'll say 125. And look where it is. It's way over here. Now I notice that it finishes here. This is that orange, so I'm going to move that over. Let's take it to the end of that section. Right about there. So let's try it again. This time it should actually show me what I want to see. So I'm just simply going to go to F5, Shift F5, so that it opens that slide. This is what your audience will see. Well, they'd see a little bit better. Oh, it's on click. Okay, let's go back here. So this one here is on click. So I'll click on it and we'll say with previous. So it's going to start, but let's position it again. Right there. Okay. So let's try this one more time. Shift F5. So I start at this slide. That's better. And we could each have all of it disappear as well. It doesn't have to be just the one element. So let's just quickly do all of that. I'm simply going to copy that. So I'm going to go to this one here. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it here. Fantastic. So I'm going to add, and I'm going to add fade. I did fade here. Fantastic. And I'm just going to move my fade way over here so that it's basically at the same interval. And I'm going to change the timing so it's not so fast. Oops. There you go. So it's basically the same. And I'll move it to the same position as well. There you go. And of course, my picture. So I'll click on the picture and I'll say I want to do the same thing. So add, and I will use the fade. Fantastic. That looks good. And I'll move that one as well. So let's just grab it and move it all the way over here, right at the end, because the picture continues a little bit. So we're going to do it until it's at the end of the picture. So just need to widen that a bit so that, whoops, so that it's going to disappear as well. Now, I recognize something is going to happen here. And fundamentally, what is going to take place is that this is going to fade to white. Okay, so I'm going to take my box now that I created earlier. Okay, so there's my little box, and it is over the slide. I know that. So now I'm going to put it in the background. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click on the shape, the tab at the top, and I'm going to send it to the very back so that it's now right against the slide itself. And then the picture is on top of that. Remember, we talked about this is like paper, one on top of the other. So I'm now putting that picture at the very, very back, below the picture, this little rectangle. And now what I'm going to do is change the color of the fill. So I want it to be black. So it kind of fades right out to black. Let's try that. See what happens. So shift. In fact, what I will do here, just to get rid of that green line as well, I don't need it. So where's the line? Here's the line. No color for the line. Fantastic. So let's just play this. So shift and F5. The name should disappear unless I change something, which is possible. Did I put, I did. This is why you have to keep testing it so that you recognize what you're doing. So here I am with picture. I need to get rid of this and make this with previous. Okay, just going to make sure that that line is where it's supposed to be. Okay, so it slowly gets rid of it. And I also want to do this one here, which is the text box, to get this one to disappear. I want with previous. If you don't do that, it kind of does its own thing. Okay, cross your fingers this time. It should work. So let's do this, Shift F5, and we want to make sure it works this time. Fantastic, good show. That was amazing. Excellent. Okay. So all I really wanted to show you is that you can play and you can do amazing things if you really want to. What I could have done as well is I could have put made it just a little bit bigger, this picture. So let me try that just because I'm curious as well what will happen. I'm going to make the picture larger. Okay, I'm just going to shift that down a little bit. And I'm going to position it once again. Okay, right there. There. Okay, And what I'm going to do with this picture is I'm going to format it by putting, some of you don't have transparency. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the effects, picture effect, and I'm going to choose the soft edging, because I would like to see that dark color in the background. We're going to make it quite extensive here. There we go. So we'll choose this one. I just reposition this picture ever so slightly. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now I got to try it again. Sorry, guys, I really have to try this again. We could even layer this so that we have 2 or 3 pictures, softer and softer and softer, and have them all move as a group. But in this case, Shift F5. Well, that didn't help as much as I was hoping. The cake. Fantastic. Okay. Okay, so animations, we can play a great deal with the animations, and we can make them do all kinds of things if we are inclined to do so. It's just a question of play around a little bit, have an idea of what you would like, and then see if you can do it. Because you may find, yes, you can, or at least it'll teach you something about what you can actually do. You really do have to learn how to be a little bit creative, because when you actually get out into the workforce, you'll have a different mindset. You'll have more courage to try things. You'll experiment more than waiting for somebody to take you by the hand. You'll actually be wanting to express yourself and your skills, and that'll come across to your employer as well. They always like to see people who are able to think for themselves and be able to explore and do things and find new and exciting ways of accomplishing something. As I've been telling my students in the afternoon, which is a business course, I have a lot of business experience. And the one thing that I've learned throughout the years is we really did value people who looked for new ways of doing things, because it always provided more opportunities for the company. So here with this animation, you play a little bit and you find out what you can do. I didn't put too much into it. It's very simple, but it gets the point across. And if I wanted to talk about this mountain, I could do that very easily, because it gives me something to focus on while I'm talking. So how do I save this? So let's come back here and take a good look at this. I'm going to click on File for the backstage. And instead of clicking on Save, I'm going to click Save As, because I'd like to choose. I can choose where it goes, but more important is how do I save it? And if I click on the drop-down arrow for the different methods of saving it, I'll find there's a lot of different file types. The very first one will always be the current version, always. So if you are using, let's say, the latest versions or 2016, and you want to save it so that people who don't have that version can actually see it, you might want to choose something that is less, such as 97-2003. And that, again, is a different extension. Remember, I said before that this extension beyond the period tells the computer which program to open. So PPT is not the same as the current version, PPTX. And it will open up recognizing that some of the options that you have in the later versions do not exist in the earlier versions. And it's a good thing to save it that way, because sometimes you recognize that certain things you hope to get across don't get across and they don't save. There's other things here too, PDFs. I don't know if I told you, but I have met a number of people, and I know some people who have become millionaires literally by creating slides that they then turned into a book. And I find that fascinating, because Adobe has the ability to create what's called flip pages, where you actually save it as a PDF file and you can use it like you use a book. So you can actually flip between the slides. Really fascinating. Those people have done extremely well. And here's the bad news. They're all in their 20s. So you have to think a little bit. And of course, there's some other ones here too. Different ones do different things. So again, you have to experiment a little bit and see what you want to accomplish. If you wanted to save it as a picture, that slide, you could do that as a PNG or a GIF, or let's say you wanted to save it as a portable network graphic file. And there's a lot of different things you can save it, including a video. So if you set it up with timing, which is what we're going to do next, then you just choose where you want to save it. And it's really important that you decide, where do I really want to save my documents so that I can always find them again. And I would strongly recommend that you use the more options. So more options gives you one major advantage. I can use tags. For this one here, I'll just simply put in PPT. And this means when I'm searching for the file, I'll be able to find PPT instead of, if I forget the name of the file, I just type in PPT and it'll go looking for all the files that a tag of PPT is associated with. And I could also put in here beyond the semicolon, class. So this is also for a class. And then I could have that semicolon, and beyond the semicolon, I could put in the year or the month, so 2020. And if I wanted to, I could then search for, in the where it says search up here, I could search for these terms, one of them, and it would actually find it. Fantastic. And do I want to replace that? Yes, let's replace that. There you go. So if that's the case, then there's some other things that we need to take a quick look at as well. I wanted to review the animation so that you get the idea that, yeah, it's okay to play. Don't be afraid to play a little bit. But let's take a look at number one. We're going to go to slideshow. When I click on slideshow at the top, the two things that we've been playing with is F5, which is start from the beginning. And the other one, which happens to be Shift F5, is start from the current slide. When I do this, I can see what's really going to happen and what will the audience see. So I can actually see how much of that slide will be visible and whether or not something is in the wrong position. So I can experiment a little bit by jumping in and out, and using the escape key allows me to come back at any given point back to this work area. So let me have a slide that doesn't look like that, and I'm just going to zoom it up a little bit here. There we go. Fantastic. And there's some other things here that are really kind of essential. I'm going to come up here to the top for a moment, and I can actually set up a slideshow. So if I click on set up a slideshow, then it allows me to go a little bit deeper. It says presented by a speaker. In other words, this will be the whole screen that people are seeing. So if I'm transmitting this to someone, or I'm showing it on a large screen in front of everyone, or I could browse by the individual window. In other words, I have a couple here, or a kiosk where it runs by itself. You often see this at companies who actually, when you go in, they have an interactive kiosk. It may show you a presentation. It's just a slideshow, but it's timed so that everything happens as it goes along. You can do animation. You can even make your own little video for your kids if you wanted to, having them stick figures walking across the screen. Piece of cake. And also loop continuously until somebody presses escape. If this happened to be a kiosk and it was going to run by itself and people could just look at it, then what I might want to do is have it just keep going. Once it gets to the end, have a small break, maybe a couple of seconds, and then start from scratch again and go through it. Museums use this idea as well. Showing without narration, and by the way, since we can actually narrate and we can actually put a sound file from the beginning to the end of our presentation, we can actually talk all the way through it. So here's the good news. There are people, and some of them are just kids, by the way, I've got news for you, and they are actually creating slides and then they are narrating it and then putting it on the internet. Some of them put it into YouTube, so you can actually go looking, and a lot of people have done this. They create their own little slideshow, maybe 20 or 30 slides, and then they talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they record it, which PowerPoint can do. They make a little video. PowerPoint has that ability, and then they post it, or they put it on Facebook, or they put it on LinkedIn, or they do something like that. Show without animation, you can do that as well. Disabling the hardware graphics acceleration. I would suggest you not bother with this one unless you actually understand your computer quite well. The pen and the laser, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes. You get to decide what colors are going to be used. Now, during the presentation, you actually have the ability to use tools as well. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Showing which slides, sometimes you don't want to show all of them. And I have 19 right now, it's saying. So I could choose, let's say from number 1 to, let's say only number 2, or let's say number 4. So only go that far. And that's how far this presentation will be. So this will be a brand new presentation. I'll still have all 19 slides, but this presentation will only show me that. And also here we have, do you want to do it manually or do you want to use timing, which we're going to explore in 1 minute. So I'm just going to come back to all again, and then I'm going to say multiple monitors, yes or no, and we'll click OK. Fantastic. So can you hide slides? Yeah, you can hide the slide you're on if you want to. So let's say I want to hide this slide. I can click on it, and now it's got a little line through the number. So it's not going to show you this one when you do a presentation, but it's still there and I can see it. It's just not going to present it. So it'll go from number 1 to number 3 and forget number 2. So let's just put number 2 back in. Now, this is the area I mentioned yesterday you must be careful with. And there's a reason for this. It's so easy to get carried away talking to people that you lose track of time. It's okay if you want to show something or you want to practice. If you want to practice and you only have 3 minutes, yes, you have 3 minutes in 2 weeks from now. So you want to make sure that your presentation only lasts 3 minutes. So how would I go about doing that? Well, let's try it. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to make something up as I look at the timing. I'm not recording myself, but I'm going to be talking to you. So I can rehearse the timing. So let's do that. Click. At the top here, you can see the time going by. And I'm going to go to the next slide. Fantastic. And we'll let it go to 2. Oops, there you go to the next one. Fantastic. It starts again. Let's say that's enough. And it's going to go to this long one. And I'll say that's enough. So let's go to the next slide. And then we'll go to the next slide. And we'll go to the next slide. We'll go to the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And then cook the doggy. And the next one, and the next one. Oops, come on, next one. Had animations there. And I'll stop it at this point. So we have paused it. And I think what I'll do is I'll just stop it at this point. We'll close this up. And the total time is 52 seconds. So this would give me an idea as I'm talking the slides, how long it's actually going to be. But the good news is I can then use this information and I can go over it and experiment a little bit. When I go to view at the top and I look at the slide sorter, I can then see how much time I have given each one of these slides. Okay, so when I play this back, I can actually play it according to this. So let's go back to slideshow again. And now I may want to actually play this. So I can record them again. It will actually start to play each one of them. Oops. So let's play it from the beginning. Oh, I didn't record it. I did. Yeah. So there's the timing running in the background. Now, unfortunately, you don't see the timing. I see it on my other screen that it is actually counting down. And you could actually set this up for 3 minutes total just by evaluating how much time will it take me for each one. And eventually I'll see how many minutes have passed. So let's just quickly do that. It's just jumping to the next slide. And then it's a few seconds and it jumps to the next one. Few seconds, jumps to the next one. The next thing, automatic. This is all automatic now. And just as it clicks away, okay, so it'll come back here again. So when I was looking at that rehearsing, the one thing I can do is come back in and say, let's do this again. Now, I can stop it at any point. This number at the end tells me how many actual seconds and minutes and hours I've gone through it. So here, this tells me how much each slide is. So if I want to continue, this is now 2. And let's just say I'll click to go to the next slide. Let's go 2, I'll click to the next slide. This is now 1, 2, click, let's go to the next slide. I'm not going to let it go all the way, so let's say 2, jump to the next slide. Okay, it went to 4 that time. Okay, 2, there you go. 2, let's go to the next animation. Next animation, next animation, next animation. Next one, that was a quickie, that's a quickie, that's a quickie. That's a quickie, oops, quickie. Fantastic, and we'll cancel that. Okay, so let's just take a look at it this time. So we'll play it again from the beginning. Every 2 seconds, it's going to jump from one slide to the next slide. So if I were actually practicing my presentation, I could actually run through it once by using the timing until I got to 3 minutes, and then I could do it again if I needed to, until I get it down to where I only want so much time per slide. Sometimes the slide you want to spend a little bit of time on, and sometimes you don't. And this is why you don't need a lot of slides. Sometimes for 3 minutes, you only need maybe 2 or 3 presentation slides. You don't need 10 or 7. But in our case, because we want you to experiment a little bit, we want you to do 7 minimum. Fantastic. So the timing, and if I want to see that timing, of course, there are many ways of actually looking at it, but we'll take view for an instant and we'll go to slide sorter. And I can see the timing there, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. And maybe I want to modify this timing a little bit. And I can always come in here and make some adjustments to it in one form or another. So let me go back here again, and we'll go back to slideshow. Because we can also record this. Now keep in mind for setup, play the narration, use the timing feature, or don't use the timing feature. If I decide not to use the timing feature and I go back to view for a moment, this timing is not going to work when I actually want to play it. Let's go back here. So I'm going to use the timing, show the media controls underneath. Now, when I play something, let me just open this up. I'm going to make sure I turn the timing off first. And we will just simply go F5. Here it is here. At the very bottom of my screen, you can actually see little icons. There's an arrow that goes to the right. There's one to the left. There's a pen. We're going to talk about that right now as well. And of course, there are other icons here to zoom up, for instance, if I want to zoom up on something. There's also a keyboard, and there is the more. So more allows me to choose a variety of different things here, display settings, etc. Sometimes when you're presenting, you may find that your presentation doesn't look right for some reason, and you may have to modify some of those settings. So this is nice to have these tools available to you. The pen, however, let's just take a look at our pen. Okay, so here's a good slide to play with the pen. And I'm going to come down here and click on the pen. Wants to know, what do you want to use? A laser pointer, a pen, or a highlighter? Well, I'd like to use the pen, so let's choose a color. I'm going to use green. Fantastic. There you go. Fantastic. So you can use the pen, but there's a challenge here. And this is an important challenge. Whenever you use a pen or use a laser, you never save it that way. As soon as I try to close this presentation, it's going to ask me, do I want to keep all of this writing I put on here as well? I want the slides, but I don't want the writing, because every time you do a presentation, if you save it with this new, let us say, graffiti on it, it unfortunately will be there forever, and I don't want that to happen. I would like the freedom to be able to add notes as I'm talking to people. So I'm going to press escape. There you go. And it's going to ask me, do you want to keep that graffiti or not? And the answer is no, discard. Otherwise, it would leave it here, and I don't want that to happen. So keep in mind those little tools at the bottom when you're displaying something, they really do help you, because you can give people, a variety of different explanations, or you might want to draw an arrow. So let's do that very quickly. I'm just simply going to choose this one here. So Shift F5, there it is. And I'm going to use the, let's say we'll use the pen again. Actually, let's use the highlighter. So there you go. I can draw an arrow, okay? And I can say that's a horse, that's a dog, okay? And that's lunch. Fantastic. So we can actually do that. And of course, just because I'm using yellow doesn't mean it has to be yellow. It could actually be red that I decide to use. So there's lunch. Okay, the slow one is lunch. Fantastic. Now you wouldn't want to save it like this. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that when you do press escape, it's going to ask you, when you try to go back to the regular view, that you can either keep it or you can discard it. I would rather get rid of it so that the next time I display it, I can once again use those tools. The other thing that is important here in slideshow is your ability to, let's say, record it. Now, recording means I can put it on a web page, I can put it in a blog, I can put it on my Facebook channel. I can put it in LinkedIn. If you have any other social media, some of them out there allow you to put in your little videos. The beautiful thing about PowerPoint is it will crush it down to make it small. So the file size will usually be quite small, but that's only because you don't have any videos in it. If you have a video inside of it, it'll make it quite large. So here's my record, and I'm going to use timing, and I'm going to just record from the current slide, or do I want to start from the beginning? I'd like to start from the beginning, create a brand new presentation. Fantastic, there you go. Now you can't see it, but on the other screen, my face is there as well, unfortunately. So I can now talk, and it's recording what I have to say with my microphone. And as I jump between the various slides, I might come in here and grab the pen and say, you know, this is a horsey. For those of you not too sure what a horse looks like. And this, of course, is a cat. You probably didn't recognize that. It had big ears. Okay, it has a couple of these things here as well. Okay, there, big eyeball, one eye, so that's a cat. So by doing this, and then of course going to the next slide or ending the whole presentation, I get to decide entirely what I want to do. And as I'm doing this, it's recording it as well. Fantastic. So just bring that to an end. And now I have a recording, but look what happened. Okay, all that garbage is now on that slide. But the good news is I actually recorded something that I can then turn around and make it into a video. Or I can clear it. I want to clear everything that I've done so far, clear the timing. Maybe I want to get rid of the timing and start from scratch, or clear the current slide only. I'll clear them all for the moment. So now the timing is all gone, and I can go over it and over it and over it and create a variety of different shows. Remember, I can create different elements here. I can come in and actually create a custom slideshow by choosing what slides I would like. So click New. And now I can say, I only want to see the first slide. And what kind of slides do I have here? Well, let's take the eagle. And I don't want the mountains. I want the cooking the dog. Where's cooking the dog? Cooking the dog. There we go. And that's all I want. So I'll click Add. And now I just have 3 here. And I can manipulate them. I can say cook the dog first. So let's just put doggy up. And then I'll click OK. I give it a name. So let's call it Cook the Dog. Cook the dog. There you go. And I'll click OK. Fantastic. So now I have a custom slideshow called Cook the Dog. And when I show it, there's my first slide. There's my Cook the Doggy. And there's the eagle. And that should be the last slide. Only 3 slides were used. And that was it. So I can actually create custom shows. There's Cook My Doggy. And I can create a new one. So new. And I'll create another one. And we'll call this Cook the Horse. Okay, so there's Cook the Horse. And we'll take number 1. We'll take number 2. And where's the other horsey? Oh, yeah, the eagle. So we'll take the eagle as well. We'll say that's enough. So I'll click OK. And now I have 2 to choose from. So if I want to show the horse, click on that. And now I can show this one. So even though I have 19 of these in total, I don't have to use them all. I can decide which ones I actually want to use. And this is why I said before, don't put this in. Because when you save it, this is going to be there from this point forward. and it really does kind of ruin your slides a little bit. There you
Or
go.
you can just make a copy of it.
Yeah, you can make a copy of it as well. We can undo a lot of things as well. So there it is. So there's 3, and now I have 2 custom slideshows. Of course, you can have as many as you want, and many companies, as I've mentioned before, one company I know for sure has thousands of presentations, but they only have one set of slides, and that's Cara Foods. They do business with all the airlines. They do business with the train companies, bus companies, etc. They provide food, but they have thousands and thousands of slides, but they pick and choose which slides they want to show to the customer. So this is really fascinating that we can play with that. So there are some other things here as well, but I'm going to leave those out for the time being. I just wanted to go over this particular material. One last thing, which is review. If your spelling is not the greatest on the planet, you can always use the spell checker. And there's a thesaurus here as well that you can always use. Check accessibility, because not everybody has your version of PowerPoint and may not have the ability to use the tools that you have. You can actually click on it and you can go through your document to see what issues would actually appear. And there's a few here right now, different issues that have been discovered in this presentation. Of course, playing around with it, of course, there's quite a few, like audio and video. There's some errors there. If I open it up, it tells me what those issues happen to be. And I can then go in and correct it for, let's say, somebody who doesn't have the current versions of PowerPoint or Office. We can also translate. So for those of you who would like to, you do it in one language, you can then translate it into another language. And of course, you can pick and choose which language you want to use. You can compare it, and you can also take your comments. Comments are really useful in an office environment where you want to show your presentation, but it has to be checked out by somebody else first. And they get a chance to do this at their own leisure, and they can leave comments for you. So let's just say this particular slide, I'm not too keen the way it is right now. So I might actually decide to put a comment on this one. So let me just go back to view for a moment so I can see the normal view. Fantastic. I'll put a comment in it and I'll say, let's say, do you like my handy red pen? And of course, I can leave this comment and then the next person can come along and reply to it. So whoever opens it up, they can come in and say, not likely. And by the way, do not answer yourself. People will wonder if there's something wrong with you, especially if you're asking yourself a question out loud. And of course, you're answering out loud or you're writing a response. There might be something wrong with you. Fantastic. And of course, it can go on and on and on. The name of the individual will always appear here as well. So these are some of the things to think about. We can actually see all of these comments. We can compare the information as well. Hiding ink. So maybe I want to hide the ink as well, deleting it, and now it's gone. So as I said, everything is reversible, but you have to understand your product in order to do those things. So the good news is I'm going to let you go so that you can actually work on your project and the training. The training at Cengage, this is the last training. I want you to actually go through everything that you have done so far. For some of you that are brand spanking new, you haven't done a test before, And this course, this particular course, did not have any quizzes in it. But think of it this way, your final exam, they give you 4 hours to do it, but it doesn't take that long by any means. It's just that they recognize that you have a family life, you have children at home, probably vying for your attention. They really want to bug you while you're doing something important. So while you're doing your exam, you'll have 4 hours from beginning to end. You cannot stop it. Once it starts, it has to go all the way through, and the time is ticking away. But here's the good news. It's exactly like a training session. It's exactly like the apply function within the training, where it actually is asking you to do something, you then do it, and it then grades it. So you don't necessarily get told, yes, you did it right, or no, you did it wrong. You have to go through the entire thing to determine how many you have right and how many you have wrong. And of course, there's usually about 80 questions in total. So take your time with this test. Now, we'll talk about it again tomorrow, but I don't want you to get upset or to become stressed out. It's really not difficult. If you're actually having fun with the training and the apply section, when you're applying these things and it gives you that little dialog box at the bottom that tells you what they want you to do, and you're able to figure it out relatively easily, then you're going to do well on that test. You just want to practice. That's all you really have to do is practice. And I suggest, and I keep suggesting this, and I have a lot of experience as to why I'm suggesting this, but I definitely want you to play. Play with the product so that you get a real good feel for it and you don't feel stressed when you're looking for something because you literally know where to look. Any questions so far?
Michael, I'm sorry. You said that the PowerPoint training is in Cengage?
Yep.
I can't see anything. I'm only seeing the Word and Excel.
Where have you been all week?
Here.
Okay, let me just open up Cengage. And you have been doing the training each day?
No.
That's probably the reason.
Because I can't see, like when I open up Cengage, I'm only seeing like what we already did, like Word and Excel. There is no PowerPoint.
Okay. On Monday morning and also Tuesday, I kind of went over that. There's a code that I give out at the beginning of the course.
Uh-huh.
And that code needs to be put in. So let me just put this information in here. And then I'll post that code again. Open this up.
The code is there in the chat, Michael.
Yeah, I know it is, but some people don't even look at the chat. So let me just find it here. I've got so many courses. There it is. Okay. So I'm putting in the code. What you do is put in the code, usually on the left-hand side when you can see your Excel and your Word. On the the right-hand side, there's a little box that asks you for the course code. This code MTPN49DQ3B8G, put that in, copy and paste it in, and then accept it, and it will open up PowerPoint for you. So what you'll actually, okay, so what you're actually going to see, let me just open that up here. Where's PowerPoint? PowerPoint. So what you're going to actually see will be, once you open it up, PowerPoint here. And each one of these has only a training. There is no quizzes in this particular course and no projects other than the project I gave you on Monday. Okay, so there you go. So all the trainings are in here. There's 4 of them in total. Definitely go through all of them. Now, for the project, again, I just want to reiterate, I did in the chat, I put a document in there called AS1, which is assignment number 1. And that is your project, which is due on Friday. Now, this is the end of Friday. So you have the whole day to finish it off. And then I want you to send it to me in an email. So you're going to save that project. You're going to put your name on it so that when you're saving the file will have your name on it. And that means I'll be able to grade it on Saturday when I sit down in the morning and start grading things. So you definitely want to be working on this up to that particular point. Remember, there are only 21 things that you have to include, and you can have anywhere from 7 to 10 slides. And it's just something that you want to talk about. Make a single subject. Some of you have asked me, can you have 2 subjects? The answer is no, you want 1 subject. But you can always break it down very easily. Just to give you an example, let's say I wanted to talk about a holiday. Well, slide number 1 could be an introduction with a title, My Holiday to, let's say, India, or My Holiday to Hawaii, or My Holiday to Japan, or what have you. And I could put that in there as my title with a subtitle, which could say an interesting journey. And then, of course, my first slide after the title slide will be making the arrangements and what I went through to make those arrangements, getting the taxi to the airport, getting on the airplane and what the people were like when I got on the airplane, and maybe have a picture of the airplane. And then the second slide, well, maybe the second slide is in flight, and I'm talking about the people in the airplane and how they serve meals and what the picture of a meal might look like. And I might go on like that. And then the next slide, the third slide, well, then I could actually break it down again and say, I just arrived. Let's say it was Hawaii, and they run up to you and they put that lei around your neck, in other words, the flowers. And then you catch a taxi from hell. It drives down the road at 50 million miles an hour. And then you get to the hotel and you immediately run to the beach. And then the next slide, I can show some of the sights that I saw. In other words, pick one and then talk about it, or give 3 pictures maximum, little pictures, and then talk about each one of them so that you can actually embellish these. And you can use animations, you can use bullet points. So the 21 different elements that you're actually putting into your slides, it can be spread out between all of them. And it's so easy to do. And my last slide, my 7th or my 10th slide, would actually be the conclusion, flying home and wishing I hadn't left. I wanted to stay there. So we could talk about that, and then arriving, and of course, the winter scenery. Going from Hawaii to winter in Canada is quite a shock, especially when you forgot to bring your coat. Fantastic. So you can talk about a lot of things. Just break it down, make it simple. Don't try to overthink it. Some of you have a tendency to kind of go too deep. Don't go so deep. Just enjoy yourself. Break it down simply. Any other questions so far? Did you use that code? Did it work?
Yeah, thanks. I'm in now.
Fantastic. So guys, I want you to go over to Cengage. Make sure you go through all your training. Remember, you can go through it as many times as you want, but practice and get good at it. Open up PowerPoint on your computer and just explore it and play. And make sure that you're working towards your project as well. And I will see everybody again tomorrow. So have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, Michael. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day, Michael.
Yep, take
Bye,
care.
Michael.
Have a great day, everyone.